Historically speaking, the state of Florida has been famous for its sunny beaches, expansive theme parks, and diverse wildlife. But over the last decade or so, there's been one export that's really taken center stage, at least in terms of online intrigue. It's the phenomenon of Florida Man. Yes, Florida has in many ways become a meme thanks to its extraordinary penchant for regularly churning out some of the most bizarre criminals in the world. From Florida men assaulting people with alligators to a sloshed sunshine stater getting a DUI while operating a motorized Walmart scooter, you can rest assured that if you're browsing the web and you see an online article that has the headline Florida Man, it's going to detail some of the most creatively batshit insane crimes imaginable. And with that, put your swim trunks on and come with me on this wavy web surf special report. These are the internet's most notorious Florida men. Today's video is sponsored by Opera. In the world of internet browsers, I found that Opera is top of the line when it comes to built-in quality of life features. I love Opera's new Lucid Mode feature. Lucid Mode fixes blurry online videos with a single click. I've had a lot of fun with Lucid, as a lot of my video research comes from me digging through old 480p videos and old school YouTube. It's interesting to see Lucid work its magic on these old clips. Really sharpens those images up. And of course, Opera has you covered with the essentials. It's got a built-in VPN, ad blocker, and private browsing mode. I'm also a really big fan of Opera's tab islands, which help clean up your workspace. This feature allows you to consolidate related tabs at the top of your browsers to islands. Here you can see I've got some YouTube videos I'm researching and some Google Docs that I'm working on. Now that's a lot of tabs. It's cluttery. Let's island them out and boom. The workspace is much cleaner, easier to navigate. We know where everything's at. And lastly, this browser comes equipped with Aria, Opera's native AI tool. With live access to the web, Aria greatly expands your capabilities with AI. It's easily accessible in the sidebar and gives you clear answers instantly. Aria gives you real-time information to any questions asked and generates content based on your ideas in just a few clicks. What more can I say? Opera has it all and even a little more. I want to give a big thanks to them for sponsoring today's video, and if you're interested in downloading Opera, a link is in the description to do so. Florida man violates a plush doll. Florida men are no stranger to committing sex crimes. However, this particular Florida man was jailed for a deviancy that few even in the Sunshine State can lay claim to. He violated an Olaf the Snowman doll in public. On October 22nd of 2019 in Pinellas Park, Florida, a man named Cody Christopher Meter visited his local Target retail location. But what you'll soon find though is that this was no ordinary visit to pick up new clothes or groceries. Rather, the man's purpose for being at this Target was far more sinister, with Cody apparently visiting the location to fulfill a depraved sexual fantasy. Upon arriving at the Target store, the 20-year-old man went to a merchandise display which housed various toys from Disney's Frozen movie. He then picked up a large Olaf plushie from the shelf, removed his genitals from his pants, and began humping the stuffed snowman on the Target store floor. According to reports from officials, Cody would ejaculate on the toy and return the desecrated doll to the display shelf. And this wasn't the end of the degeneracy, as Cody was looking for round two. After defiling the Olaf doll, Cody reportedly walked over to another toy aisle and grabbed a large unicorn plushie. He would then proceed to violate this toy in a sexual manner as well. If not stopped, this rampaging dry humper likely would have nutted on every toy in the Target store. Thankfully though, due to surveillance footage, security detected what Cody was perpetrating, and police were notified promptly. Cody had been caught red-handed, and when police arrived and questioned him, he confessed to doing, quote, stupid stuff, and said that he, quote, nutted on Olaf. As a result of his serial dry humping spree at Target, Cody was charged with criminal mischief. As for the toys that he violated, they were removed from shelves and destroyed. Following Cody's detainment, his father revealed to police that he, quote, has a history of this type of behavior, unquote. The exact details of what the father meant by this statement weren't elaborated on, but needless to say, it's possible that this wasn't Cody's first foray into such disgusting activity. Whatever the case, Cody's time in custody was short-lived, as he was released from jail on the same day of his arrest on a $150 bail. About a year after the crime, in March of 2021, a judge ordered a psychological evaluation for Cody. The judge appointed him a psychologist before a hearing on April of 2021 that would determine his ability to stand trial. He was eventually determined fit to stand trial, and in January of 2022, the Florida freak was sentenced to serve 6 months of probation. This sentence came after he pled no contest to criminal mischief and indecent exposure charges. He was also ordered to pay $725 in court fines and costs. Florida restaurant thief avoids jail because he's obese. This next Florida man story is admittedly one of the more humorous on the list, and that's saying a lot because there's some pretty funny shit in this compilation. It's the tale of a Florida criminal that was so morbidly obese that he literally could not be placed in prison. In 2007, a 600-pound man named George Olikar of Sanford, Florida, was very fittingly arrested for scamming various restaurants and stores. George was said to have been peddling this scam as far back as 2005. George was notorious for ordering a bunch of food, eating like half of it or more than half of it, and then complaining about its quality in an attempt to get refunds. This gluttonous con man once reportedly downed 6 milkshakes from a restaurant, and then when it was time to pay, he claimed his last shake had a hair in it and refused to pay the tab. 6 milkshakes, bro. Jesus. This portly gentleman's fast food scamming antics would eventually catch up to him though, as Big George would finally be arrested after he reportedly consumed close to $50 of 7-Eleven beef jerky and attempted to trick the staff members of the gas station into giving him a refund under the premise of one of the bags having moldy beef in it. His deceptive trick failed, and police were actually notified over this event. After being tipped off about this scammer, cops later made their way to George's home and arrested him for his alleged scam attempt. The police report from the incident indicates that when cops were arresting George, the man, quote, raised the pitch of his voice to sound like a woman. So I guess George thought if he faked a high-pitched voice, the cops would like go easy on him, thinking he was a girl or something. Regardless, this pitch shifting did little to deter law enforcement, as George would be arrested and booked. While in police custody on the way to the police station, the 38-year-old man reportedly muttered in front of police officers, quote, "The beef jerky got me." As a result of his activities, George was charged with 5 counts of felony petty theft. After being charged, it was thought that George would then be sent to jail and begin trial. But something worse happened to the man. In the months after he was charged, George came down with a serious unspecified illness and became bedridden as a result of this. George's illness was so severe that rather than being jailed, he was confined by his sickness to a hospital bed and at one point even had to be put on a life-saving respirator treatment. Once stabilized, he was sent to a nursing facility to recover. In light of this sickness, one thing was becoming clear to prosecutors who were trying to punish George. Even if they got George in jail due to his obesity and health problems, he likely wouldn't survive in prison. George's immense weight put him at serious risk for morbidity. And not only that, if they were to take George to trial, the state would have to pay for the bedridden man's transportation to court sessions and potential medical bills associated with health problems related to travel. So to avoid this hassle, George was given a no-contest plea deal, which an attorney accepted on his behalf. With this plea deal, George would have to pay $1,365 in court costs and an unstated amount of restitution. George would also plead no contest to 5 counts of misdemeanor petty theft. And due to this bizarre situation surrounding his weight and health, George, as far as I'm aware, never spent a day in prison. Next up, Florida man attacks a minion. Over the years, Illumination's minion characters have become, at least by some people, some of the most loathed mascots in animation, with many folks expressing their contempt for the obnoxious creatures and the movies that they're in online. Well, one Florida man hated minions so much that he would go on to violently assault one. On the evening of July 8th of 2018 in Daytona Beach, Florida, 26-year-old Ryan Nehart from Omaha, Florida, randomly attacked a man wearing a minion costume in front of a gift shop. The victim wearing the minion suit was 41-year-old Jamie Roam. a partially blind and mentally disabled man who was completely defenseless throughout the attack. Ryan body slammed and kicked Roam in the groin repeatedly as two of his friends watched and cheered him on during the attack. One of these friends was filming the assault for Ryan's social media. The altercation was also caught on the store's security cameras. While Ryan was beating Roam, the disabled man pleaded with him to stop, but the minion's pleas fell on deaf ears. Ryan continued to hit the minion until he was eventually subdued by the shop owner and a good Samaritan who was witnessing the violent ordeal. Finally, police would arrive on the scene and put an end to the altercation for good. After first responders arrived, Roam refused medical treatment as he apparently only had some bruises, but he allowed the police to take pictures of his injuries. In police body cam footage from the incident, Ryan can be seen telling the officer that he's a social media influencer and that Roam provided him with explicit permission to film the occurrence for his Instagram.
My name is I'm an Instagram star. I'm literally just doing a prank. Listen, bro.
So Ryan was essentially claiming that this was a staged prank. Ryan said, quote, "I'm an Instagram star. I'm literally doing a prank. I'm an Instagram stuntman." He also said, quote, "I was just kidding, bro. Me and the minion talked it out." Turns out, though, Mr. Roam was not in on the prank, and Ryan, he wasn't really even an Instagram star, apparently only having 1,875 followers at the time on his account. And according to Daily Mail, Ryan had a YouTube channel that had a whopping 48 subscribers. According to reports, Roam told police that he didn't want to wrestle with Ryan after the assailant asked him to participate in a fight. And I guess Ryan just went through with it anyways. Ryan was initially arrested and charged with misdemeanor battery and criminal mischief, but was promptly released. After posting bail, Ryan reportedly posted an apology video to social media, although this video has since been deleted.
I would have never did this if I knew I was gonna hurt anybody. I did it for the love of you. How was I supposed to know? I thought I had the minion's consent.
Several months later, Ryan would plead no contest to the charges issued against him, and as a result of this, he was sentenced to 10 days in jail and a year of probation. The terms of his sentencing also required him to avoid drinking alcohol and to enroll in a moral recognition therapy course. And lastly, the judge ordered him to pay $280 in damages to Roam, and he was also made to pay for the damages caused to the minion costume. Next up, Florida man gropes a woman during a palm reading session. How low can a Florida man stoop to satisfy their sexual urges? Well, this Florida degenerate knows no bounds, apparently. On May 19th of 2014, 52-year-old Zulfikar Jaffer of Sanford, Florida, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of battery for allegedly groping a woman's breast while pretending to be a palm reader at a Walmart. Police received a call from a woman who claimed that Jaffer read her palm at the store and then followed her into the parking lot and offered her another special reading. She reportedly accepted his offer and got into the backseat of his car for this special procedure. According to the report, Jaffer then told her that he needed to feel her heart and proceeded to put his hand under her blouse. And it was at this moment that the man reportedly grabbed her breast. And apparently this wasn't the man's first rodeo, as there was a report from this Walmart stating that he had done something similar days prior. The police report from this incident also details other disturbing activities allegedly perpetrated by Jaffer. One report states that after a mom strapped her daughter into her car, Jaffer came up to her in the parking lot and said that he wanted to read her palm. The man told her that he could tell that she was pregnant and wanted to feel the baby's heartbeat. Once this woman denied the man's request, he reportedly groped her breast and fled the scene. Because of these alleged breast groping incidents, Jaffer was eventually arrested. And after his arrest, even more women came out making allegations against him for these parking lot breast grabbings. Following his arrest, 2 additional victims came out against Jaffer and stated that he also assaulted them as well, and I'm unable to determine the outcome of his charges. Whatever the case, it goes without saying, when you're in Florida, be wary of a Walmart palm reader. Florida man illegally mounts a manatee. Along with its sunny and sandy beaches, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Florida is also famous for its aquatic wildlife. Much of this precious wildlife is protected by the state government, and messing with said protected animals comes with serious consequences. Consequences that our next Florida man would have to face after he attempted to ride a wild manatee. On September 16th of 2016, 47-year-old James Roy Massengale jumped into a manatee-inhabited body of water in Alvarado, Florida. As Roy swam around the protected waterway, he would go on to touch two adult manatees and their babies. Witnesses who had seen Roy jump into the water yelled out to the man, informing him that what he was doing was illegal. In response, Roy continued to fondle the manatees and even allegedly yelled out, "I'm riding it!" Fish and wildlife conservation officers were notified about the manatee mounting and later found Roy, quote, reaching for, touching, and lying on top of manatees in the creek. The officers informed him that what he was doing was against the law, and it was at this point that Roy became verbally aggressive with them, repeatedly saying, "Take me to jail." Roy would continue to harass the manatees for a short time until wildlife officers pulled him out of the creek and arrested him. For his manatee misconduct, Roy was charged with annoying, molesting, harassing, or disturbing a manatee. Next up, Florida man caught violating a Siberian husky while wearing a dog costume. While most furries out there are simply fun seekers with a love for animal alter egos, there have been a small handful of bizarre crimes committed by members of the furry fandom. And when it comes to furry criminals, the ones from Florida are built different. Which brings us to the disturbing case of Mr. Nichols. On February 11th of 2019, 21-year-old Christian Stewart Oscar Nichols of Outsmarts, Florida, was arrested after allegedly filming himself sexually violating his Siberian husky while wearing a dog costume. It all started on January 25th when an individual from out of state reached out to the Pinellas County, Florida Animal Services Department to inform them of a repulsive video and image that they had discovered online. That video being the aforementioned bestiality content, and local authorities had been tipped off to it. After reviewing the photos and videos of concern, detectives claimed that Nichols could be seen in the content wearing a black and white husky costume while performing sex acts to the animal. They also commented that the dog seemed to have been in significant distress during the video's recording, adding that the animal tried running away from Nichols at one point, which allegedly resulted in the furry freak hitting it with a sex toy and then continuing his monstrous assault. These investigators eventually connected this content to Mr. Nichols and worked on tracking him down so they could go in for an arrest. When confronted by police investigators, Mr. Nichols came clean. He reportedly admitted that he was the twisted mastermind behind the gut-wrenching material containing his dog named Ember. He was arrested and charged with 1 count of aggravated animal cruelty. The man was also charged with an additional 10 counts of possession of obscene materials after more unrelated zoophilic videos were allegedly found in his bedroom. Thankfully, the dogs that were in Mr. Nichols' possession, including Ember, were taken away from him, and one can only hope that they found new homes where they weren't abused. Florida man attempts to sell a downed electric pole. In what might be one of the most batshit hillbilly redneck Florida men stories in this compendium, it's the tale of Douglas Allen Hatley, a Florida scrap metal thief with some serious money-making ambition. On November 16th of 2020, 71-year-old Douglas Allen Hatley of Lakeland, Florida, noticed a downed utility pole on the side of the interstate. No stranger to selling scrap metal for money, the guy got an idea. He thought that he might be able to strap this thing up to his car and sell it for money. So this man goes on to tie this giant pole to the top of his 1997 Toyota Camry. Hatley felt as if he had just come up on a small fortune, but his plans would be thwarted after the scrapyard turned him down. Seeing this pole and feeling as if it was probably government property, the scrapyard was requesting special documentation for Mr. Hatley to sell this thing, and that was stuff that he didn't have. And feeling as if it was stolen, they reported him. I mean, could it not be any more obvious? It's strapped to a fucking 97 Camry. Hatley also got reported after a witness saw him strapping the pole to his car's roof and called the Tampa Bay Regional Communications Center. This witness then followed Hatley's car from a distance and provided details on his location. Shortly after, a highway patrolman pulled him over and confiscated the pole and car.
There was no criminal intent whatsoever. It was totally
when you take a
non-violent.
light pole off the interstate that don't belong to you, that's
Well, look, I had no idea it was wrong.
Does that belong to you?
No,
Obviously,
but it's
you knew it
good
was
for
wrong
scrap.
In light of being busted for stealing this utility pole, Mr. Hatley was arrested and charged with grand theft. His bond was set at $2,000. Unsurprisingly, this wasn't the man's first rodeo with Florida law enforcement. At the time of the incident, Hatley had been arrested 48 times prior. These arrests starting as far back as 1971, with the man being arrested for crimes ranging from burglary to grand theft to probation violation. Hell, 2 of these arrests were actually quite similar to the specific crime he was in trouble for now: stealing government property. While it's not exactly known what kind of time Hatley got for stealing this utility pole, it goes without saying that this is probably one of the lower IQ Florida criminals on the list. Florida man attempts to steal a chainsaw by shoving it down his pants. Florida criminals are different from those in other states, especially when it comes to just the brazenness of their activity. It's like they have no limiter. It's almost as if the scorching temperatures and swamp-like humidity just give them superpowers or something. Yeah, for example, like Florida shoplifters, they don't steal bags of chips, they steal fucking chainsaws. Which brings us to the topic of our next story, the Treasure Coast lawn care incident. On October 28th of 2014, 28-year-old Anthony Ballard of Port St. Lucie went to the Treasure Coast lawn equipment store and asked the cashier if they could make change for $1. However, this was nothing more than a ploy to steal. While the employee was distracted, Ballard allegedly grabbed a $600 chainsaw nearby and shoved it down his shorts. He then covered it up with his shirt and left the premises. So he had the chainsaw stuffed down his pants, he covered it up a bit with his shirt, got change for the $1, and left thinking that nobody had saw him. However, this chainsaw bandit wasn't as sneaky as he thought he was, as some store workers had noticed the fleet-footed Floridian running off with the chainsaw in his shorts and they followed him. While being pursued, Ballard realized the chainsaw was quite the running impediment, so he has the idea of yanking it out of his pants and throwing it into like a hidden area of the woods that he could return to later. He hoped to escape and return to the location in the future, and it didn't seem like when he was being followed that anyone saw him throw the chainsaw, so he certainly thought that like in the future I can come back and pick this thing up and everything will be fine. Ballard would manage to escape the initial chase by store employees and would indeed return to the location that he threw the chainsaw approximately 40 minutes later. But if you couldn't tell already, Ballard isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. The store employees actually did see where he threw the chainsaw, and once they saw Ballard come back to look for it, they called the police. Cops would arrive, and in short time, they arrested the chainsaw swindler, charging him with grand theft. He was also booked at the St. Lucie County Jail, and his bond was set at $18,750. The chainsaw swindler was an idiot, but what about the Florida man who butt-dialed the cops and revealed a murder plot? Now, we've all butt-dialed someone before, called somebody on accident. Hell, I'm sure some of you have been talking shit about someone you shouldn't be talked about, and you start getting suspicious thinking that your phone has accidentally called them. Well, how about the guy who accidentally called the police while discussing who he wanted killed? On May 5th of 2013, 24-year-old Scott Simon of Pompano Beach, Florida, and unwittingly recorded himself detailing his intentions to murder a man named Nicholas Walker. Initially, 911 dispatch and police thought the call to be nothing more than a joke or some sort of prank. That was until later in the day, 33-year-old Florida man Nicholas Walker was found dead in his vehicle, which had crashed into a guardrail on the interstate. Upon searching the crash site, it was discovered that Nicholas Walker had actually been shot. The man was dead and had been shot multiple times, in fact. Now naturally, considering these circumstances, it became clear to authorities that this butt dial was no joke or prank and was actually some criminal out there who had inadvertently or unknowingly confessed to a murder plot. This investigation eventually led them to the man who made the phone call, 24-year-old Scott Simon, as mentioned earlier. Furthermore, this investigation revealed that Simon was a ringleader of sorts and had two accomplices that helped him with Walker's murder. These two accomplices were 27-year-old Ronald Desenor and 25-year-old Michael Dupree. And it turns out Walker was apparently killed as a feud that all began at Waffle House. Some of this feud was reportedly caught on surveillance video. After this Waffle House altercation, Simon's men conspired to kill Walker and concocted a plan to follow him as he left the Waffle House establishment. Ronald Desenor was the man responsible for the inevitable shooting of Walker, and Michael Dupree served as a getaway driver. Simon's involvement was coming up with the plan itself. All three individuals were jailed without bond. 2 years later, on August 14th of 2015, the three Florida men were sentenced to serve life in prison for the death of Walker. And it's insane to think that these men likely wouldn't have been caught if it wasn't for Simon's accidental butt call to 911. Coming up, Florida man collects literal tons of CP. As with any other state in the US, there are many instances of criminals getting busted for CP in Florida. But it seems like in the Sunshine State, the cases are just almost unimaginably bad, such as the instance of the man who literally had tons of CP, as in the amount of printed material literally weighed a ton. On February 23rd of 2023, 72-year-old Paul Zittle of Marion County, Florida, was arrested after federal agents discovered thousands of pounds of CP at his home, printed versions of this material. As a result of the sick and bizarre discovery, the man was charged with 25 counts of possession of CP. 1 month before his arrest, Detective Chase King of the Marion County Sheriff's Office received a tip that CP files had been uploaded online. Upon further investigation, it was revealed that the IP address associated with these disturbing files belonged to Zittle. The police were then given a search warrant to raid his home. During the search, detectives uncovered a seemingly limitless amount of disgusting CP photos. There were other people living with Paul at the time, and they explained to police that Paul Zittle would never allow them to go into his bedroom or office without him being with them. Investigators estimate that there were over 220,000 print images in Zittle's possession, a collection that weighed over 2,600 pounds. Some have made the comparison online that Paul Zittle's CP collection weighed the same as a Ford Fiesta sedan. Paul's criminal pictures were allegedly stored in large stacks and boxes all over the creep's bedroom and office. After Paul was arrested, he was taken to Marion County Jail and held on a $250,000 bond. He's currently awaiting trial, which is set to take place in October of 2023. What really has to be said? If there was a guy that was going to have literal tons of CP, I think this is what he would look like. Let's be real. Coming up, we've got the Florida man that got a DUI on a Walmart motor scooter. Drinking and driving is absolutely terrible. Not only are you putting your own life in danger, you could potentially just kill innocent people. If you thought you could only get a DUI from behind the wheel of a car, boat, or motorcycle, think again. On July 24th, 2022, 39-year-old Aaron Gregory from Melbourne, Florida, was getting rowdy. The man had apparently had some drinks that night and decided to go visit Walmart. Mr. Gregory got a motorized scooter card, and it said that he had an open beverage and was just driving recklessly around the Walmart at about 5 to 6 miles an hour, just cruising through, running into shelves and almost hitting people. He was just a madman on the loose, I guess. What's important to note, though, is that mobility scooters are considered to be motor vehicles in the state of Florida, so he was committing a crime while doing this. Seeing this belligerent motorist wreaking havoc in their store, Walmart called the cops. When the cops arrived at Walmart, they found that Gregory had an open bottle of Smirnoff liquor as he was riding around. They noted that the man had consumed 2/3 of the bottle by this point in time. Police also noted that Gregory had, quote, glassy eyes, smelled like alcohol, and refused to take a breathalyzer test. By this point in time, having consumed, almost an entire bottle of Smirnoff, Gregory was pretty fucked up. When the police attempted to speak with the man and obtain his ID, they noted that he became, quote, unresponsive and couldn't answer any of their questions.
this your charger? Yeah? All right. What?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. No? Is that your backpack? Backpack? Is that your backpack?
Yes.
Yes.
It's ma'am.
Okay, is that your bottle of vodka? Is that yours? Is that yours? Came out of your backpack. Watch your back.
And Gregory wasn't playing up his drunkenness either, as the man's level of intoxication was so high that police had to call medical and escort him out of the store on a stretcher.
Let's go. Come on, spin around. Let's go. We got all day. All right. Sit back this way.
Give me your other hand. No. Stay there for a second.
You guys here for that lady with chest pain? Anything else?
Get one more day.
There you go.
I held over more of Palm Days. Really? Palm Days suck. Where you ditch
All right, all the way in.
we still beat the herd over Palm Day.
Nope, in.
Later on at the police department, the man was barely able to stand up and continued to decline any field sobriety tests.
Do you wish to do some field sobriety test? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You willing to provide a breath test?
Are you willing to provide a breath test for me? Where you blow into a machine? Are you willing to provide a breath test? Would you take that as a no?
Once arrested, he was taken to the Brevard County Jail on a $3,000 bond. 2 months later, Gregory pled no contest to the disorderly intoxication and open container charges. Judge would find Gregory guilty on both misdemeanors and sentenced him to 2 months in jail and instructed him to pay $522 in court costs and fines. Lastly, Gregory was prohibited from going back to that Walmart for 6 months. Next up, we have the Florida man who allegedly groped Little Mermaid. Florida's Disney World amusement park and resort is a world-famous place of magic and wonder, but sadly, it can also be a place of sexual assault and harassment as well. On November 2nd of 2019, 51-year-old Brian Sherman was at Disney's Magic Kingdom with his wife when they visited Ariels' grotto. At the grotto, they asked for a photo with a worker who was dressed as Ariel the Little Mermaid. The woman playing Ariel sat in between Sherman and his wife, and this is where things started to get creepy. It's said that Sherman was very excited and told Ariel that she was his favorite Disney princess. He also told Ariel during the photo shoot that he loved her and proceeded to put his arm around the girl, even going as far as allegedly groping the mermaid's breast. During the time of the photo being taken, a Disney co-worker, recognizing the inappropriate touching, attempted to instruct the handsy patron to assume a different pose, perhaps one that didn't involve him touching the poor employee's breast, but this was a fruitless effort. The man wouldn't move his arm. It's important to mention that the victim, the woman playing Ariel in this case, was essentially restrained during this entire alleged assault, as the nature of the chair in Ariel's grotto and the Ariel costume itself, it limited the actor's mobility to a great degree. Also note in this photo that Ariel was essentially pinned in the grotto seat between Brian and his wife. The woman's limited ability to escape this situation makes Brian's alleged assault that much more disturbing. Once the alleged groper was satisfied, Sherman and his wife left the grotto, at which point the victim of his alleged assault started shaking and crying. Around this time, police arrived at the scene, and the woman in the Ariel costume told the cops that she wanted to press charges against the grotto assailant and that she would like to testify in court. The grotto was shut down following this incident. Ironically, the pictures that were taken of the three were used as evidence to arrest Sherman. Several hours after these photos were taken, the man was arrested for battery and was taken to the Orange County Jail. He would be bonded out after $500 was posted. This wasn't the first time of Sherman being accused of committing a sexual crime. Back in 1999, Sherman was found guilty of, quote, sexual battery of a victim younger than 12. Though, unfortunately for the alleged victim in this Ariels Grotto incident, there would never be a conclusion to these charges, as about a month after the Grotto incident, the charges levied against Sherman were dropped. The reasons for these charges being dropped, I'm not too certain of. Whatever the case, hopefully the girl in this situation that played Ariel wasn't like traumatized from this event, but yeah, that was the Ariels Grotto incident. And here we have the Florida man who was released from jail only to be rearrested after attempting to steal from cars in the parking lot. Like, just how? Like, how can you be this dumb? On April 4th of 2019, 37-year-old Michael Casey Lewis of Stuart, Florida, was released from the St. Lucie County Jail after he had been arrested for grand theft. And within 15 minutes of being out, he would reoffend. After being released from jail, Michael Casey meandered around the parking lot, and police say they saw him, quote, acting suspicious and checking vehicle doors. Lewis was also acting belligerent, yelling about how he wanted some cigarettes. When the freshly released man was confronted in the parking lot by police, Lewis stated that he was waiting for his girlfriend to arrive. However, what he had actually been doing was stealing from unlocked cars. Police claim that Mr. Lewis allegedly stole a debit card, 4 packs of cigarettes, an iPhone 7, a Florida driver's license, a lighter, and $547 from a car that was parked in the jail lot. Upon this discovery, Lewis was then rearrested and placed back into the same jail that he had left minutes prior. He was charged with grand theft, burglary, and possession of stolen property. Later in the day, he would be bonded out. And this time, he managed to get out of the parking lot without stealing anything or being rearrested. So good on you, Mr. Lewis. Congrats. Florida man looks for daddy's little girl on Craigslist. Disturbing Craigslist postings have led to the apprehension of many criminals over the years. A lot of them have been from Florida. On March 18th of 2018, Warren Arthur Seckler of Boca Raton, Florida, was desperately looking for what he called daddy's little girl. The man was so desperate for such a companion that he put up an ad on Craigslist to find one that fit the bill. The post stated that Seckler was a 62-year-old, quote, gentleman who was looking for a young girl. What exactly did he mean by this, or what age girl was he looking for? Well, that would become clear after an undercover police officer would respond to it. Finding the post extremely suspicious, police would reply to his thread and ask if he was interested in a girl under the age of 18. Did you say younger than 18? No, that would be illegal, 18 and older only. However, about an hour later, Seckler would return to his inbox and reply, "Okay, so I might be interested. I'm always looking, tell me about it." The undercover detective then told Seckler that they had a daughter that was 14 years old, skinny, blonde with blue eyes. So this detective is like posing as someone who is potentially offering their fake daughter to Mr. Seckler. It's been alleged that Seckler followed up this message the next day and asked the undercover investigator if the daughter would like to be spanked among other sexual acts. And later, Mr. Seckler would send his phone number to the undercover operative under the premise of him getting a photo of the daughter. At this time, the creep also sent the detective a photo of himself holding his granddaughter. Throughout their conversation, Seckler also sent 3 photos of his house to show the officers that it was a safe place for the 14-year-old. The man even showcased his bedroom. The man also revealed how he planned to treat the 14-year-old very well, I guess. The detective says, quote, "The suspect then stated he bought my daughter's stuffed animals and was going to give her one each visit, hoping she would return. He then offered to pay for dinner and gas before we drove to his residence." It was becoming clear at this point that they were dealing with a bona fide pedophile, and Seckler had been discovered also sending messages to other minors around this time as well. Feeling as if they had enough evidence, police would work to set up a sting. Undercover detectives would set up an appointment to meet Mr. Seckler, with the man believing he was about to link up with a 14-year-old. This meetup was to take place at a Delray Beach McDonald's on March 28th, and Seckler would take the bait. At this McDonald's, Seckler would finally realize that there was no 14-year-old to be met. Instead, he was met with law enforcement, who promptly arrested him. Seckler was charged with online solicitation of a minor, traveling to meet a minor, and unlawful use of a two-way communications device. He admitted that he had posted the Craigslist ad and made plans to meet with the fake mom and the fake daughter. Quote, Warren confessed to picking up a teddy bear and candy for the 14-year-old daughter. Seckler was booked into the Palm County Jail and held on a $53,000 bond. According to reports, the man is currently serving a court-ordered term of community monitoring under the authority of the Department of Corrections and the Florida Parole Commission. Next up, a mischievous Florida teenager who tricked his classmates into thinking that there was a school-wide penis inspection occurring. Let's just say that schools in Florida have some strange graduation requirements. In May of 2019, an unidentified student at LaBelle High School in Florida managed to hack his way into the school's computer system and send out a mass email regarding a, quote, mandatory penis inspection. This email was said to have been sent to every student, faculty, and staff member working at the school. The email said, quote, the district is required to conduct a mandatory penis inspection on all male LaBelle High School students in accordance with the Florida Penal Health Code 69, the email read. Seniors who do not pass the inspection will not be allowed to graduate. The email also mentioned, quote, female students are to disregard the message. It's been reported that several seniors immediately went to the principal's office and asked where the inspections would be performed. That did not happen. However, what's not made up is the fact that this email was actually sent. In response to it, the dean of students would send an apology to parents regarding it, and the individual student that sent it out is still unknown. Whatever the case, you gotta admit, this is very much so a Florida version of a senior prank. To begin our next story, let's just say some Florida men are believers of non-traditional religions. The Florida man featured in this next story took some shrooms and performed a bizarre ritual that landed him in prison. And now we have the case of the Florida man who was arrested for performing a nude ritual. On June 22nd of 2018, a man in Cape Coral, Florida was spotted dancing completely naked while covered in blood around a fire. The naked, bloodied man was said to have been chanting gibberish and dancing around like a complete maniac. After a bystander had witnessed the bizarre spectacle, they called police. Shortly after, police officers would arrive at the scene and identified the nude ritualist as local man, 27-year-old John Hennessy. In the time between police being called and arriving, it's been alleged that John brandished a knife and even attempted to break into someone's house while he's essentially like the greased up deaf guy from Family Guy, but instead it's blood. When police eventually confronted John, he's alleged to have grabbed a large wooden stick and attempted to bat them with it. However, this alleged assault apparently failed as the police tased the shit out of him. John continued to erratically yell out chants and gibberish while he was being tased, almost as if he was praying to some sort of Florida god to intervene or some shit. After John was detained, he was sent to a local hospital, where he was treated for burns that he had suffered during his fire dancing ritual. Police initially suspected that the man had taken a hallucinogenic drug, but statements from his sister after the arrest would indicate that the guy had a long history with mental health problems and drug abuse. She would claim that John's behavior had been spiraling out of control after he had left a rehab facility. Quote, I love him and I wish he'd get help. He needs to realize he needs medication. He needs something. John was charged with 1 count of criminal mischief, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and 4 counts of aggravated assault on law enforcement. The nude Florida ritualist was found guilty on all charges. Next, we have the Florida man who stripped naked at Chick-fil-A and instructed people to look at his penis. The story begins back in September of 2018, when a Florida woman answered a phone call from her romantic partner. This frenzied caller would inform the woman that he was being chased while riding his bicycle near a Chick-fil-A in Palm Coast, Florida. The woman, who was nearby at the time, went to the Chick-fil-A location to see what was going on with her boyfriend. And what she found was a belligerent 30-year-old named Corey Michael Hatzel. This apparently deranged lunatic was attempting to fight the bike-riding boyfriend in the restaurant's parking lot. the man apparently experiencing some sort of psychosis delusion. During his mania, Corey allegedly removed his clothes and started yelling at people in the Chick-fil-A parking lot, instructing them to look at his penis. He reportedly told the lady's bike-riding boyfriend, quote, "You're gay for looking at my penis." Given this bizarre situation, the woman would dial 911. When authorities arrived at the scene, they detained Hatzel. Hatzel would refuse to give them his name initially, and police suspected that he was on drugs after noting that he had dried blood under his nose.
Put some gloves on. Gloves. Yep.
One officer described his experience on the scene in the police report, stating, quote, "I observed multiple vehicles drive by while the man was nude and yelling, 'Look at my penis.'" As a result of this nude freakout, Mr. Hatzel would be arrested. The couple that was the main target of Mr. Hatzel's nude showcase refused to press charges for indecent exposure. It was found that Hatzel had somewhat of a criminal history, the man previously being arrested for a DUI in 2017 and possession of cannabis in 2016. As a result of flashing his penis at Chick-fil-A, the man was booked into the Flagler County Sheriff's Office jail and held on a $1,000 bond. Florida prisoners save a baby in a locked car. What happens when a group of hardened, convicted criminals work together? Well, in the state of Florida, people's lives get saved. On February 14th of 2019, a group of inmates in Newport Richey, Florida, came to the rescue of a 1-year-old girl who was accidentally locked in a car. It all began when the girl's dad was strapping her into the car seat in the back of his vehicle. And apparently not thinking at the time, the man threw his keys on the front seat and closed his daughter's door, and I guess planned to go around and get in. But when he did this, he threw the key, closed the door, and the entire car locked, and he had just locked his keys inside like a freaking idiot. After the parents of this child realized that the door was locked, they immediately called police to the scene. But it wouldn't be the cops that saved this kid, as a group of prisoners were on work detail in the nearby area, rushing to the scene of these panicked parents in their vehicle and offering the family help in the matter. These guys were willing to help, and I gotta be honest with you, I feel like some convicted criminals are probably the best people you could have if you needed to break into your own car. The motley crew of prisoners, under correctional officer supervision, were thankfully able to pry the front door open and created a passage large enough for one of the men to use a clothes hanger and unlock the SUV's doors from the inside.
We'll have to get some wire and just hold it shut while we drive until we get a new car. Yes, thank God. Woo! Thank you so much.
Nice job, boys.
Thank you.
Have a happy Valentine's.
Thanks, you too.
And in about 2 minutes flat, they managed to open the car and rescue the child. The little girl's mother was recording the rescue operation and can be heard saying, "Thank God for the criminals in the world. I respect all y'all." The county sheriff would go on to comment on this bizarre rescue facilitated by convicted criminals. Quote, "There's only a very small percentage of those criminals out there that want to fight us and want to attack us, but a lot of them, like these individuals, they know they made bad mistakes, bad choices, but they want to do the right thing in life." Florida man gets arrested after changing his Facebook profile picture to his wanted poster. When you're wanted by police, the last thing you want to do is give them any sort of clue regarding your whereabouts or activity on social media. Well, this at-large criminal from Florida must have missed the memo about staying away from social media when you're on the run. The story all begins on the night of August 29th of 2016 when police were called to a home after reports of alleged battery taking place. However, once officers arrived, the perpetrator of said battery was nowhere to be found and had apparently fled the scene. The victim of the alleged battery identified the suspect as Stuart, Florida resident Mac Yearwood. And as authorities began to dig into Yearwood's criminal history using their databases, they were surprised to find that the man already had 2 warrants out for his arrest. So wanting to find this guy, they dug even deeper, looking into Mac Yearwood's social media accounts. And this is when they realized the extent of Mr. Yearwood's stupidity. as upon checking his Facebook account, police found that in the time following his alleged battery, Mr. Yearwood had changed his Facebook profile picture to a mugshot of himself related to a prior battery incident. Yeah, so it appeared like Mac Yearwood, he knew he was on the run and he was bragging to police that he was, pretty good at getting away with battery, I guess. Goes without saying it's pretty stupid to tease police in this way, and family members of the man urged him to remove the wanted picture as his profile image. This isn't real, is it, Uncle Mac? Another family member replied, quote, "I wish he would take it down too. The cops use Facebook now." He should have listened to his family because Yearwood's braggadocious Facebook activity, well, it was like an open book for police to monitor and watch his movements. And thanks to his own postings, police were eventually able to discover that Mr. Yearwood was residing at his brother's house. After making this discovery, police then traveled to his brother's property and arrested Mac Yearwood on the spot. The particular charges and outcome of this arrest are unknown. But needless to say, if you're ever wanted by the police, log the fuck off of social media, please. Next up, the genius Florida man who locked his keys in his car to prevent a police search. So when you're pulled over and you're riding dirty, how do you stop the cops from finding your stash? Well, this 4D chess playing Florida man thought he had solved the conundrum. On Christmas Eve of 2018, 40-year-old Charles Albert Garcia was pulled over by police for going 70 miles an hour on a 40 miles an hour road in Monroe County, Florida. After stopping him, police reprimanded him for speeding and requested to search his vehicle under the suspicion of him being in possession of narcotics. Garcia did in fact have drugs in his vehicle and was about to get busted. But that's when he comes up with an idea. A tactic that Mr. Garcia hoped would keep him out of jail. When asked to step out of his vehicle by police, Mr. Garcia would oblige the request. However, when doing so, he intentionally locked the keys inside of his vehicle before closing the door. So not only could he get back into his car, police couldn't open the car either. It was unsearchable. He had cracked the code. Well, unfortunately, this wasn't the genius plan that Mr. Garcia thought it was. While certainly police were temporarily inconvenienced by this decision made by Mr. Garcia, they wouldn't be stopped from searching it in the long run. As for Charles's half-baked master plan would come crashing down when a towing company arrived to the scene of the alleged crime and unlocked his car using a special tool, which then allowed officers to dig through it. And inside of the car, they allegedly found a menagerie of drugs, including cocaine, meth, pills, heroin, and marijuana. Upon the discovery of the narcotics, Mr. Garcia told the deputies that the car was his father's and that he had no idea that drugs were inside. For a short time, police would entertain his story. While listening to Mr. Garcia's ruse, it was discovered that he had a suspended driver's license. When he was asked about this suspended license, Garcia said that it would soon be reinstated, which was a partial lie. Mr. Garcia's license was indeed suspended, but it had been suspended since April of 2012. As a result of this incident, Mr. Garcia faced several felony charges for drugs and driving with a suspended license. Additionally, he faced misdemeanor charges for cannabis possession and obstruction of justice. He spent his Christmas behind bars and was bonded out the following day. As far as his charges went in court, I'm unable to ascertain this information. In what might be one of the most Florida man stories of all time, this next case involves a man trying to recreate Back to the Future's DeLorean scene and failing miserably. On December 20th of 2015, an unnamed 40-year-old Pensacola man drove his Dodge Challenger into a strip mall, destroying a tax service office and a coffin retailer. According to the man, he did this because he was, quote, trying to travel through time. The police report regarding this incident states that the man was driving at high speeds on the interstate in an attempt to enter a time portal, and the only reason that he crashed is because the portal didn't open fast enough. These people are crazy, dude. In the process of failing his time travel, the man totaled his car and wreaked havoc on the mall. But thankfully, the driver was uninjured, and the businesses were closed as it was Sunday, so no one was hurt or killed. The man was taken to the hospital for an evaluation, and as punishment, he was given a citation for reckless driving. And how could we forget the story of the armless Florida man accused of stabbing a tourist? On July 10th of 2018, 46-year-old Jonathan Dale Crenshaw of South Beach, Florida, reportedly stabbed 22-year-old Cesar Coronado. However, this was no ordinary stabbing, as Crenshaw had no arms, and instead allegedly used his foot to stab Coronado with a pair of scissors. The altercation all began when Cesar Coronado apparently asked Mr. Crenshaw for directions. For some reason, this agitated the homeless man, and Crenshaw allegedly stabbed Coronado and left the scene. It's also said that Mr. Coronado was on vacation at the time, and literally the day that he got there, this happened and he was sent to the hospital. A quote from the man says, "I'm not from here, and this is not what I came for. I came for a vacation. I just said, do you know where this is? But as soon as I talked, the only thing he reacted was, he just cut me." When authorities arrived at the scene of the alleged scissor-footed attacker, they found Mr. Crenshaw near the location of the attack. Mr. Crenshaw had a different story, claiming that Mr. Coronado approached him while he was sleeping on the side of the street and punched him. Crenshaw claimed that he took the scissors out, put them in between his toes, and stabbed Coronado twice in self-defense. After an investigation of the crime scene, it seems as if police believed Cesar's story. As a result of this, the alleged foot-stabbing bandit was arrested and charged with aggravated battery, and the man was held on a $7,500 bond. However, curiously, after this case went to trial in November of 2021, Crenshaw was found not guilty by a jury. However, that being said, in recent years, Crenshaw has appeared in viral social media videos chasing individuals around with a pair of scissors in between his toes.
What the fuck?
I'm scared of you. Do not fucking chase me. Ow! Is you gonna drink your soda with the damn cup? Ow, shit! He is chasing me, y'all. Look at him. He is fucking chasing me.
While no other attacks have been recorded, it'll be interesting to see if the man winds up in trouble again.
On it.
And don't forget to give it to a crack addict. That's all we got on the beach, crack addict.
Next up, Florida man with no hands or feet becomes a fugitive after killing his parents. At the age of 16, Sean Petrosino of Orlando, Florida became a quadruple amputee after a strong bout of bacterial meningitis. He lost his feet, hands, and parts of his limbs in the process of this illness. Despite this loss, Sean had a positive attitude and support from his local community. At the time of the tragedy, the young man receiving donations of wheelchair ramps, a voice command laptop, and a modified van to suit his newfound needs. But now, 14 years later, the man now 40 years old, the guy is wanted for killing the people that supported him the most, his adoptive parents. On November 4th of 2014, 64-year-old Nancy and 63-year-old Michael Petrosino's bodies were found at their home office by the police. Police had made this discovery while performing a wellness check. This wellness check was called after the school that Nancy had worked for 10 years became concerned as she wasn't showing up for work. It was then discovered that Sean Petrosino had recently moved back in with his family and he was considered a person of interest. Turns out that despite Sean essentially having a set of nubs for arms, he had managed to kill them. Both of Sean's parents had been shot to death with a high-powered rifle. There were several metal casings and bullet holes found on the scene, and Sean was responsible for this slaying. The office where the couple had been killed was covered entirely in blood. The police report states that Sean attempted to clean up the mess before leaving the premises. Upon making this horrifying discovery, authorities immediately began their search for Sean, who was on the run in his dad's red Toyota Camry, driving the vehicle despite his disability. According to friends and neighbors, Sean seemed terribly depressed around the time of these slayings and suspected a deteriorating mental state may have led to the killings. Friends say that Sean also visited a gun range around this time. The day following the killings, detectives published a surveillance photo of Sean at a Wells Fargo ATM. This image was passed along to the public, and authorities urged folks to be on the lookout for this alleged at-large killer. The man was considered armed and dangerous. However, police would eventually catch up to Sean. About a week later, on November 11th, a red Toyota Camry was pulled over in Memphis, Tennessee, after police noted the vehicle making an illegal U-turn. As cops were walking to the driver's window, they heard a muffled pop sound. Turns out Sean was in this vehicle, and that pop sound was a gunshot that he used to end his own life. He had offed himself before the cops could catch him. In the wake of this brutal killing and Sean's death, his ex-wife Cynthia posted a tribute on Facebook to Sean. She wrote, "All we can do is remember the good times and move forward. He was my best friend and I will always love him. Unfortunately, in 2014, our problems grew and mistakes never went away. We separated because I thought we would be better off apart, and we had been unhappy for a while. Sean touched so many of our lives. There are so many stories and memories throughout the years. I would like everyone to share the stories, and together we can keep his memory alive." Cynthia's tribute seems to indicate that she feels that their separation is what resulted in Sean's deteriorating mental state. Whatever the case, this is one of the most bizarre tragedies to emerge out of Florida. And that was a tour through what I like to call our Florida Men Hall of Fame. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the trip and if we should do another one in the future. I want to give a major shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys. Wavy Web Surf out. Peace.